Hi, it's Chris Titley here today on the Scoreboard podcast. I'm joined by Clare Jamison. Clare, thank you so much for being part of this series, and good afternoon.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me on. Great to catch up and chat about rowing.
Yes, no, for sure. Clare, you are living currently in Brisbane, and we've had so much news for Brisbane, including a cyclone, including some Olympic announcements. But how are you taking it all in the last month or so, being living in Brizzy?
Yeah, loving it in Brisbane. Always sunny, always great. But yeah, we have had the cyclone or ex-cyclone come through. I actually managed to avoid the worst part of it, escaping down to Sydney for rowing down there in a sprints regatta. So escaped and managed to compete up there, down there. And yeah, yesterday they're figuring out more about what Brisbane
Yep.
32 is going to look like. So that's, yeah, exciting.
Now, Claire, you are a beach sprint rower, and there has been some news in the last couple of years about beach sprint rowing competing at the Olympics, and it will be in Los Angeles in 2028, which would be amazing for your sport. Do you want to give the listeners a little bit of understanding about what beach sprint rowing is and where you fit in?
Yeah. So rowing, there's sort of two forms. You've got your classic flat water over 2 kilometers, which is either on a lake or a river and has been in either various sizes of boats, singles up to eights, and that's what people are commonly will see at the Olympics. And the second type is coastal rowing, and this is on the ocean, on the sea, and in slightly different types of boats, and either in a single, a double, or a quad. And there's two forms of that. So that's endurance, which is around a series of buoys, so 4 to 6 kilometers, or beach sprints, which is you start on the beach, run to your boat, jump in, slalom out 250 meters, 180 turn, and then just straight back to the beach, hop out your boat, and run up and hit a buzzer. So it's 2 lanes, side by side format, and a knockout. And that's the format that's was announced into LA 28 for the first time. So yeah, it's quite a new format. It's sort of been at the World Coastal Champs since about 2019. And yeah, is a very exciting time to be part of the sport.
Yeah, no, it sounds so casual that you sort of just swim 250 meters and just run a bit and hit a buzzer and see what happens. But I'm sure it's not like that, Claire. And I'm curious to know how you got into the sport and how you've gone thus far, sort of moving your way up in terms of the ranks.
Yeah, so I traditionally learned about rowing at university. This was back in the UK at Oxford, and learned to row there, um, and ultimately rowed in the boat race, which is 8 people in a boat. Traditional format. I then left rowing and went into the corporate world of London. But as I'm gradually realizing, no one ever really leaves rowing. So I ended up finding it again. Initially, when I moved to Brisbane, actually, was taken under and learned how to scull. So that's where you've got 2 blades or 2 oars each, as opposed to sweep where you've got 1 oar each. And then COVID, particularly, which took me back into the UK, was where I discovered coastal. We had a series of various lockdown measures, so really getting out in the sea by yourself was was the only option for rowing. So that's where I got thrown back into rowing again, and it sort of escalated a lot since then. So I gradually learned how to scull, learned on the sea, was involved in a lot of the endurance format. There's quite popular in the south coast of England, and then from about 22 have been as part of the GB beach sprint team. So there's various competitions both across the UK and across Europe, and then ultimately competing at the Europeans and Worlds for the last 3 or 4 3 or 4 seasons.
Fabulous. Now, you're the first sort of Team GB on the podcast, firstly, so we're not going to discriminate which country you're from or wherever you're from, and you're certainly the first beach sprint rower, and you're the first person probably that I've interviewed that's in the top in the world, basically a silver medalist in the recent Worlds in terms of the beach sprint rowing, where you just go for 250 metres and you just paddle a bit and you run a bit and you press a button, right?
Exactly. Simple
Yeah.
as.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the World Champs? Let's talk about the World Champs
Yeah.
last year, where you went, is it Genoa, and then you competed in multiple events, but certainly culminating in coming home with something around your neck.
Yeah, so it's been, well, maybe rewind actually to 22 was my first experience of Worlds as a beach sprint, which was in the wonderful location of Wales. And that was in the mixed double. So that was my first sort of flavour of how this all works. And yeah, that resulted in a silver. But anyway, back to 24. Yes, it was in Genoa. So I was competing in the single, so that's just me in the boat, and did come away with a silver, which was very exciting because it was sort of the first one which, following the announcement of being in LA, and included probably a couple of my heroes of women's scullers from the Paris 24 Olympics. So it was just absolutely fabulous to like race with those girls that I watched in Paris. And yeah, the format is, so you initially do a time trial. So everyone goes off at 30 second, 45 second, a minute intervals, depends on the competition, to get ranked 1 to however many, 40. And then from there, there could be a second time trial, but eventually you end up with the top 16, and it'll do 1 versus 16. So then you get into side-by-side knockouts. So it's quite fast-paced. And once you get through to that top 16, it will be in rounds. So you could end up doing your sort of quarterfinal, semi-final, final over the course of about 45 minutes. So although it's only 500 meters, it's got that back-to-back element. And there's just the reason why I love it is there's probably a lot more going on than your flat water 2K. As in, you've got this running element, you've got the waves to deal with, you've got a lot of sort of uncertainty of like managing wind, the course, directions, and running on very tired legs is something I need to probably get better at, but it's always a killer at the end. And just having that brain space to like think about everything else rather than just cooking yourself to the line. But that's
the amount of races that you do, did you add up how many in the end in the World Champs?
So the World Champs would have been 4 rounds. So I came second in the time trial. So I sort of got or third, I think second or third. I sort of got to the top end, which was pretty good. So I had 4 rounds from my last 16 through to the
4 rounds, yeah. And then you also competed in another event as well.
Yes, so I also was in the endurance racing with my mixed doubles. So that's with another guy. We had that the couple of days before, which was over 4K heat, and 6K.
Wow, that's
finals.
A lot.
Yeah. So it's quite a different, and that's sort of a mass. Well, it can be both. In Genoa, they decided to do it as a mass start, so a bit like a sailing race. So you all line up between 2 buoys, and then it's all systems go to the first buoy is about 1 kilometre, and if you can just crack that one out and not collide with any other boats, it does get a bit argy-bargy, but by the boys. But that's sort of part of it. It's yes, you've got to be the fastest. And
argy-bargy by the boys and the boys, the 2 boys.
Boys and the boys. So there's a lot of shouting between the crews, but it's all good fun as soon as you get on the beach, which is another thing that I love about Coastal. There's a really great coastal community. You sort of gradually see the similar faces, similar competitors, and it's everyone's all systems go, but when the gun goes or start line goes, but there's a lot of help and camaraderie on the beach. So it's good, definitely good vibes.
And Claire, your love for the sport, what do you think it is about the sport that you love the most, and why do you keep coming back?
I I think I just love being on the water. So I do also row on the river in Brisbane, and I also row surf boats down at Currumbin, which is a sort of the Aussie extreme version, I suppose, of coastal. So overall, I just love getting out. I actually went kayaking this morning as a bit of cross training. So I just love being on the water is probably number one. And I think I love the more dynamic nature of coastal. So yeah, thinking about the waves. It's much more being like an agile sprint athlete and a bit more maybe a lot more going on. So I think that's why, yeah, why I've sort of kept at it. And I feel like I'm just always learning. It's quite new sport, so it's like how do we get in the boat? How do we surf the waves? Every race is different. Every beach is different in terms of beach profile, like yeah, and everything. So I think there's just so much variety, and I feel like I'm still learning, and I've got a lot to learn.
Yeah. What about the key elements to success in your mind in terms of being able to accommodate most of these conditions and to be, at your best when your best is needed?
In terms of key characteristics of a beach
Yes.
row,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I mean, initially you've got that physicality of rowing, and it is still an endurance sport. And when it hurts, you know you still got 10%, and when it really hurts, you still got another 10%. So it's just getting through that. The I think it's that sort of agile mindset to deal with the surf sport nature of it, and maybe that's something that I've come to appreciate a bit more by getting involved with the surf clubs over here, and just sort of you can learn how to read the waves, learn how to take on the waves, but ultimately the ocean's the ocean. So it's just having that approach of how to quickly adapt in the race situation. You have, for example, things where the winner of the round before will get to pick a lane. So because funnily enough, the conditions or sandbanks will change within sort of that 30-meter, 40-meter stretch of beach. So it's sort of having that quick mindset of thinking about what do I want? Do I want deeper water, shallower water, bigger waves to manage? But then I might get more of like a push if I get on it at the right point. So it's that sort of quick decision making, and knowing that everything can change at the last minute, because you've also got things like you borrow pool boats. So rather than in flat water where you turn up with your own scull and your own blades and it's perfectly set up, you get given your boat anything from like 3 minutes before you start racing. So it's just that quick sort of, right, let's just get on with what we can get on with and get going. So it's just a bit more uncertainties, or like learning what uncertainties you can manage and not manage.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm just thinking in my head like the combination of sports there. I mean, you mentioned surfing, you mentioned kayaking, you mentioned surf lifesaving, you mentioned rowing, swimming, running. Like there's like five. Is there one I'm missing as well? Well, like there must be like a combination of all different sports, and potentially training in those verticals or being okay at those verticals would put you in good stead to be part at least of your sport.
Yeah, so I think that's the other thing. It is sort of working out what on that physicality side, I think people are gradually figuring out what it makes a beach sprint rower, because I think there's probably different characteristics from your classic flat water rower in terms of, as you say, like it's a bit more multidisciplinary, and it's working out, okay, rather than doing one 2K race for 8 minutes or like 6 minutes to 9 minutes, it's that power but repeatability, and maybe more power and brute force, because the boats are heavier. They're a single scull, a single coastal scull will be about 30 kilos compared
Oh,
to
wow. Okay.
14 kilos of a river single. So you've just got more boat to move and a bit of a different way to move it.
Yeah, and what do you enjoy the most?
Or in terms of style of rowing, or
Yeah, well, as in like the single versus the mixed, all the different formats.
ooh, very good question. I do love the single, and I like that you're sort of, it's your responsibility. You can't blame anyone else. It is all comes down to you. However, the double is very fun to row and have that teammate with you.
Yep.
obviously comes with slightly more pressure, I personally feel, of you're responsible for the performance of someone else. So when I race in the mixed double, I'm often in the bow, which means I do the directions. So I'll have to look and call sort of the buoys, other boats, make a judgment call of like taking an inside line or staying out of trouble. So that's a bit more pressure.
Keeping cool under pressure.
Yeah, exactly. And communicating that when you don't really have any oxygen left in your lungs. But yeah, there's all different styles. And then a quad is just that those decisions then get put on the cocks, and it's much more just get your legs down and stay together. So yeah, love a bit of everything.
And what about the data and the tech side of things now? As you've sort of the last few years, we're getting lots of different technology improvements. So we're getting better times, better splits, better wind, better, different points of data that you can look at to get better at what you do.
Yeah. Rowing is very sort of data heavy. You can have a very controlled environment and row on the erg. That gives you standardization of scores, resistance. Then when you're out on the water, you have got the GPS. We across both flat water and coastal, you have what's called a stroke coach. That will give you a little screen. That will give you your speed, rate, and that's all the data you can. And we'll wear heart rate monitors so that we're keeping within whatever zone for that session. Quite like a lot of athletes or endurance athletes, it'll be split between your high intensity sessions and your just low base building aerobic ones. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of data that gets passed on. And also with the boat designs, on a slightly different tangent, that's definitely developing with the two main manufacturers of coastal bringing a model out each year, and it's different designs. Do we want boats to be able to turn quickly or hold their line in the waves, or you're ultimately going to be jumping in and out of boat, like rounding about the beach? So it's what's actually most durable. So I think that's definitely an area that's got a lot of data and modeling behind it, and it's really developing, especially as you have these sort of pool boats. So they're vying for ultimately the LA contract, but in each of the years before that, the world champ contract.
Yeah, right. Okay. There's definitely some commercial, the business of sport there. Speaking of the business of sport, is there these tournaments that you compete in or potentially compete in? Is there some prize money there to sort of lure the athletes? How are sponsors looking at it? How are brands looking at it? And how's the money situation from the sport?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not that much in rowing. We have sort of in the classic format, you have like the bigger events of the boat race or Henley, from a particular UK focus that seem to attract the sponsors. The world champs will be run by World Rowing, and there are again boat brands getting involved with various sponsorship of their top athletes for that. Although there has been, for example, this race down in Sydney that I was just involved with, prize money for that one. So it'll be interesting to see where it does go. I think especially as the beach sprint format is sort of comes into LA and has a lot more of a spectator appeal. It's a bit more dynamic, uncertain. So, and the waves obviously create drama, like one person can be ahead and then suddenly get tipped out by a wave. So I think there is a lot of chat of sponsors coming along, sort of a world tour happening for probably 26. And so yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it comes, because it would definitely help support athletes that are trying to be
for sure. And obviously with your traveling around and competing, etc., there's travel costs and there's hotel room costs and training costs and all that sort of stuff. So what can brands or people do out there to kind of help you in the sport achieve your dream?
There's definitely options, because we do compete across the world, and throughout the whole season, and they're gradually showing it on various TV channels. It's funny, actually, a friend was visiting in Sydney. It seems to be on Fox Sports, the World Champs, something seems to come on there. So there is definitely it's kind of being televised in that front. And I think it could follow on from surf boats that definitely have that. They have the money and the sponsorship and the branding of the large carnivals on the beach, and that's where you get an immediate audience of people. The amount of competitions that I've been at, that it's on the beach, people are coming along for the day and quickly get hooked and like want to find out more. So it is great for like the individual events. They'll have smaller sponsors, and you can really get to, everyone wants to come and watch on the beach.
Oh, yeah, of course. Do you get I suppose the social media or the content side of things where they like slow motion it down and someone gets hit by something, or there's a dive to the buzzer, etc., some create excitement? Is there a bit of content floating around?
Yeah, definitely. It's mainly on the world champs and European champs and Americas, I think, are all streamed on World Rowing's YouTube, and it's actually just as good footage as almost when you are on the beach, because they'll have drones at each event, and they do have a video often on the buzzer, so you do get those of a race that's often 3 minutes. It really comes down to like seconds on the buzzer, and they will have that replay dive. So we'll definitely maybe have to put some links of the best dives that have been on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm keen for that, and I'm keen to see you featured in some of them. How do you practice your dive?
It is something we need to learn on. I've got the sideways roll, but maybe we need to get practicing a bit more.
Or a trademark celebration if you win, potentially.
Yeah,
as well,
exactly.
Some sort of TikTok dance. But the buzzer, I mean, like the diving of things and running in the sand. What's your training regime look like in regards to making sure that you basically covering all the different aspects?
Yeah, that is something that I'm gradually trying to figure out with limited time. How can we get better at all these things? So I think over winter or over the off season, it'll be a lot of base miles more across river, coastal, the ergs, and just straight running. And then as we get closer into the season, the sessions will be more on and off the beach, include some beach sprint, as in running, sprinting, practice on the sand, as you say, and that sort of power is, we all do 2 to 3 gym sessions a week, which will be your sort of strength and conditioning. And increasingly, I'm finding it's actually just the wider sort of conditioning, just to keep your body in one piece. Like all athletes, it's applicable to everyone. Is if you can just work on your weaknesses and get that consistent block of training, that's almost just as successful as any of the specific sessions. Just managing injury.
Favorite
of mine.
Yeah, no, sure. I'm also a little bit curious as to, you're representing Team GB, but you're basing yourself out here in Brizzy.
Yeah, so I ended up in Brisbane with work. When I'm not rowing, I am an accountant, tax advisor. So that brought me out here. And the sun was also quite a good reason to stay. It is a great training venue, because we do have the river, kilometres as much as you want to go for.
It's a bit brown at the moment.
Yeah.
after the rain, yeah.
And now we've got good navigational practice to try and avoid various floating objects. I think there's a full tree coming down the other morning.
Yeah.
So we can route there. I coastal row out at Thornside or Wellington Point. So that's where you can get some good coastal miles in, and there's a few sort of beaches to launch and land off, as well as taking it down to Currumbin or up to Mooloolaba. So we've got a good stretch of coastline in Queensland to try and get some of those surf conditions, but not too hectic surf, as well as some pretty good beaches to run on, and you can do it all year round. Apart from when the cycling comes, but that's me.
No, that's right. Yeah. And Claire, I've always played cricket and been a bit of a social cricketer through my youth, and it always coincided with rowing. But what I always noticed with rowing was that there was a lot of earlier starts and cricket.
Yes.
And it just seemed to be that some parents had their first coffee at 4:30, dropping their kids off to rowing practice or whatever it might be. I assume you're an early morning person, and my question is on the back of that: how do you go with your sleep, knowing that you're kind of getting up early and getting out there? Do you sort of head to bed at like 6 a.m. or sorry 6 p.m.? Are you a bit of an early bird to get up? And what time do you get up normally?
Yes, I definitely should sleep more than I do. Because the alarm does go off at 3:45, which is would have terrified me when I was living in London.
Yes,
But
it'll be dark pretty much all year round.
exactly.
Yeah.
So in the summer, that's definitely obviously easier because it is light. So I'll cycle down to either the river or out to the bay, and it is amazing. You can cycle out, do your session, cycle back, and it gets to the office for 8. But then I'll do a second session after work in the evening generally. But I wish I could go to bed at 6, but it doesn't quite happen like that. So unfortunately,
Yeah, and then on top of that, I was always thinking around how people eat, because do you have a banana or something at 4:15 before you go on the water, or is it too early to eat, or do you have breakfast after? And then if you have breakfast after, do you go into like a food coma because your body's like done so much exercise, and then do you drink coffee because then all of a sudden you might get a buzz later on, and then it might, so there's lots of things to think about. I'd love to get insights into what you do from a diet point of view as well, or at least how you kind of eat.
Yeah, no, these are very good. It definitely did take me a while to learn that you do kind of want to refuel beforehand, because you are doing sort of, it'll be either 10 or 20K cycle and then an hour and a half on the water, and that's too long to go without anything, especially. I'll try and eat before, just like first breakfast.
First breakfast in the threes, right?
Yep. And then second breakfast after rowing, like once I get to the office, with a coffee.
Because you're a little tired, or not?
Yeah, exactly.
You've only been up since 3:30, ridden 20 kilometres and rowed. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they say people say, Claire, you look a bit tired this morning. Like, oh, it's been a busy morning. Yeah.
Most of my days already happened.
Yeah, I've done 12,500 calories. I mean, calories. What is it called? Not calories is what you eat. What's the other one? Where you burn stuff.
Yeah, calories. Oh, kilojoules.
Calories.
Burned.
Yeah. Kilojoules. Yeah. Burnt. Yeah, burnt. Not eating 12,500 calories, but yeah. Yep.
Some days I feel like I want to though.
Yeah.
And then it's lunch, and then sort of try and eat earlier. But then you kind of get caught with this work cycle, because you don't want to eat your dinner before you train. But then you've got to eat afterwards. But you
don't want to eat too late, because you're going to get up in about 4 hours, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because then you've got 6 hours till you've got to get up and eat again. So it's a bit of a balancing act that has. I've been here for 3 years, and I still haven't quite figured it out. But
and do you get into like a really good Netflix series, and you're like, no, I can't do it. I can't watch another episode. I have to train in the morning.
It can be dangerous. I'm not a big TV watcher, primarily because I think I've already fallen asleep by the time anything would have been turned on. But it is funny that how everything has just shifted about a good 2 hours earlier, and when it gets to 9 o'clock, it feels really late.
It feels really late, yeah, particularly. And do you get a rest? Do you like weekends? You might compete. Do you get a day off? Do you or is it pretty much 7 days a week?
Try to have one rest day or one lighter day a week. I'll generally train or race on the weekend, so generally be a midweek time off. I definitely was not the best at that until last year, and a series of sort of stress fractures sort of made me think that I should probably stop burning the candle at both ends all the time. So that is something I try to incorporate and learn that like recovery is often as important as the training. And some points, as we were saying, like if work does go late, sometimes you just got to call it and just miss that session and get on to sleep, so that you can maintain the intensity of the session rather than just doing wasted miles and really surviving on 4 hours sleep doesn't
No.
help that
Yeah.
well. So it's all a balancing act, and it's a good challenge to
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Claire, I asked the guests on Scoreboard what their scoreboard moment is, and the scoreboard moment is something which is either a memory that's very distinct, or something, or a catalyst, or something that happened in your life where it sort of dictated or changed the direction of your life, or something that you're most proud of. What's your scoreboard moment, Claire?
Yeah, this is a real tough one in terms of my rowing career, which is only sort of part of highlights or like how you've ended up doing sport, I suppose. I would probably lean towards the Worlds just gone, so that's Worlds 24, with my single scull result. I think because it was a kind of accumulation of the last two Worlds, and there'd been a few sort of competitions in between that hadn't quite happened the way I wanted them to, or hadn't quite got the wave that I'd hoped for. So I felt it was a real great sort of not final finale, but a culmination of actually the previous couple of tournaments, to stand there, as I said, with probably my rowing idols, was a pretty fantastic experience, and come out from a year that had been a bit injury prone, was a high that I'll try and remember. Well, I will definitely remember for a long time.
No, for sure. And the big, hairy, audacious goal now is, with the sport being in the Olympics in 2028. Is that something that really interests you to get to that, the Olympics?
That would be incredible, and I think that is definitely on the long term plan. My immediate goals is probably back to sort of the 2025 World Champs, and take each step as it comes, because I think I've also learned nothing is guaranteed, and to love the everyday training and love the everyday competitions. Like, I love racing, and if you can enjoy all those moments along the way, and hopefully there's a pinnacle of the Olympics in the distance.
Yeah, I was going to say, you said love training and love playing, love competing. Do you really love the early starts in the training? Is it kind of like, oh, it's all part and parcel to get to that dopamine hit of competing?
I've tried to learn that I genuinely the first, when you want to hit snooze, I might question this thought. But as soon as you get out the door, the first few meters of the door are the hardest meters of the day. I actually genuinely love. 95% is basically my threshold of training, and because I think if you're not enjoying that, it's a lot of work for not. Yeah, what's the point? So, but maybe I'm also always searching for that post-workout endorphin high and hit, and buzz, maybe. And I might question it in the deepest moments of a hard erg workout, why I'm doing this. But I'd say 95% love the everyday and love the training.
And you said you hit the snooze button. How many snoozes do you have?
So we don't. Never actually snooze. You have to just get up and do it.
No, I mean, like,
The
on your
temptation
alarm. Do you
is
set
there.
like multiple alarms? Do you set like, 3:30 alarm, 3:33 snooze, 3:35 snooze, 3:37 snooze?
No, it's 3:45. Just hit it, and
Just
then
hit it.
it's like
You're up. You're gone.
rocket
Yeah.
launch happens. Otherwise, the rocket launch doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
And have you ever like forgotten your shoes for work or something in a panic that you're running a bit late and you kind of rocked up to work barefoot or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The worst one is probably having to have a sweaty sports bra for the day. That had to be solved pretty quick.
There you go. And some advice for you're a very high performing athlete, second in the world recently. Obviously, the Olympics is around the corner. You got the World Champs coming on 2025 as well. Some advice for kids who was, Claire was 15 and 14, aspiring to maybe play sport, maybe not. But some advice that you can give to kids out there that are trying different things, but also, wanting to potentially realize their potential and become, a high performance athlete.
Yeah, I think from my journey, which was I was always sporty at school. I signed up for every possible sports team, but then actually sort of slightly left the high end elite sport in my 20s and have rediscovered it in my late 20s, early 30s. So I think it's actually just to love sport, get out there, get involved with anything and everything. You don't have to specialize early. In fact, in some ways, I'm so glad that I did try everything. I did then not do sports. So I know what like that part of life is all about. Otherwise, I think you can have a lot of burnout in your early 20s. And also, it's possibly never too late. So if you find something, go for it. And it's not going to be easy, but if you genuinely love the process of doing it, and are fortunate enough to have a good support network. So it's like find your teammates, find people who want to help you, and just get involved with whatever facilities you have. They're not going to be, in my case, like the best boats, the best equipment, but if you can just get out there and do it, go for it.
Yeah, no, that's some great advice, and I just want to touch on that support crew. And obviously, there's a lot of people that you're friends with and connected with, and some are maybe following your progress. How important is it for some of your close friends and family to be on board, and for you to miss birthday parties or whatever it might be because you're training or competing and trying to be the best possible person at your sport? How have you found that level of support as well as the level of commitment that you've had and missing other things?
Yeah, I think I'm very grateful I've got supportive parents, a series of coaches both back in the UK that have sort of seen my journey from really not really knowing how to pick up two oars to where I am now, as well as develop a network in Brisbane, which has been wonderful. And when you gradually figure out what your priorities are, at the end of the day, sort of what's going to make the boat move faster, but that's also making you you've got to be a wider, happier athlete whilst you're doing that. Those who kind of get that and are excited for you will stick around, but it's just decisions. It's not sacrifices, I think. But I'm very bad at saying no to things. So I do struggle sometimes when you have to miss that wedding or miss something else. You can't do everything, unfortunately, but the people that do care, they'll still be there.
And then you've got a silver medal around your neck, second in the world to show for it thus far.
Yeah.
And then you've got the world. When are the world champs this year?
They'll be in October in Rio, hopefully.
In Rio, hopefully. Yep. Okay. And you're starting to prepare for that now. Yeah.
Yeah. So season starts up pretty soon in April, May, and it's sort of 6 months. There'll be sort of 5, 6, 7 key events to hopefully get on the start line there.
Yep. And then what about Brisbane as a destination? Are you going to have to depart our shores soon to train, or are you going to stay here for a bit?
So I've got a bit of training here, and then it'll be over to Europe for the season over there, and the UK season, and and then hopefully down south to Rio,
and not back to Brisbane, or back to Brisbane?
Back to Brisbane.
Back to Brisbane. Yeah. No. Excellent.
I think there'll always be a desire for some sun.
Oh, well, not today. But yes, in general, it's been a little bit rainy, and the cricket season has had a couple of games that have been washed out. But broadly speaking, it is sunny here. Clare, thank you so much for being part of the Scoreboard podcast today and telling your story and some great advice there for kids in regards to sport. Congratulations on your achievements last year and also the World Championships that you've been in previously. I wish you well for the upcoming World Champs later on this year in Rio, and obviously the big, hairy, audacious goal in LA in 28. Anything that our listeners or we can do to support you, let us know, and we're happy to help.
Thank you, and thanks very much for having me, and hopefully it's been useful to someone somewhere.